We are just gonna touch a little bit on the dragon formation, just with one example game. I mean, well, the dragon is an incredibly popular opening and a very popular structure. Partly because it feels so attractive at first sight, right? It's so easy to come up with a narrative that makes the dragon sounds like a completely winning structure for black. I mean, just imagine, we have a bishop on g7, it points toward the queen side, perhaps even attacking a king on c1, right? I mean, we have a knight on f6 attacking towards the center in different direction. The knight will go to c6 and perhaps even to e5 and to c4. Actually, all our pieces has easy directions. The bishop from c8 to e6, against pointing in at the queen side. And we're gonna castle, and both our rooks is gonna go to c8. The first one we sacrifice on c3, and the next one joins the attack on c8, and the queen goes to a5, right? I mean, sounds brilliant and very easy to explain. It's just like this free-flowing attack from the black perspective. Unfortunately, it is a bit of a fairy tale. And if we look at it from the white side, well, even a tempo down, actually, when white plays the English, we will see a lot of black players voluntarily going to this structure, even a tempo down, and doing pretty well. But if we look at it from a white perspective, I mean, well, it was Fischer who said, it's easy against the dragon. I go h4, I go to h5, sack, sack, and I give mate. That's, well, possible. I mean, Fischer did it well, and there is a lot of extremely complicated lines like that. The reason nowadays that the dragon is not so popular for black is not so much, this heavy attack, Fischer style. No, it's more that they have found ways where, white do long castles, but perhaps doesn't play the bishop to c4, but play in a very positional manner. And while playable for black, black has to know a bunch of theoretical lines and might be able to equalize. But that's not why you play the dragon. You want to play chess, you want to attack. You don't want to memorize a bunch of lines in order to maybe make a somewhat sad draw. So from a theoretical perspective, the dragon had lost, some of its attraction. But it's a structure that occurs with a lot of, let's say, move order tricks and so on, and with colors reversed. So it's worth studying in detail. But it still strikes me as one of these things that, when you grow up, you think, wow, the dragon is amazing. And, I think it's seen as it's part of everyone's chess education to play the dragon at some point. But probably it's also part of one chess education to stop at some point. But the next game is going to be the dragon at its best. So if you get attracted to the dragon, I can really sort of understand you. And I'm sorry if I pushed you in that direction then. Our dragon example is going to be Hrášek against Cebalo. It's a fairly typical dragon position. Perhaps queen a5 and rook fc8 is not the main line, but still quite decent. And having played h4, h5, like Fischer, just sacrificing and trying to give mate, is, the very straightforward way for white to do it. Black actually could consider just taking the gift, because after g4, knight to f6, the normal way to keep attacking is bishop to h6. But now you can just play the move bishop to h8, because this bishop is not able to take anything on the f8 square, right? I mean, we have already sort of vacated that by playing rook f to c8. But in this position, there is a somewhat annoying move, knight to d5. It threatens the exchange of queens and also to take on e7. I mean, generally being a pawn up, black wouldn't mind an exchange of queens, but this position is actually a little bit unpleasant. Knight takes e7 is an annoying threat with check. And if you go rook e8, well, there is knight to c7. So the best move is king f8, but then white goes g4, knight has to retreat, and takes, rook to h2. I mean, white is going to win the pawn back, and still has a solid, stable central edge and some play in the h-file. It's pleasant for white and not really what you want if you play the dragon. So Cebalo sacrificed an exchange on c3. Now Hrášek takes back with the pawn. That's also very, very typical. In general, I mean, the idea is that, if you exchange queens like this, takes, knight takes h5, we would say that black has a pawn for the exchange, but also that these pawns are very crippled. It's supposed to be quite good for black, but modern computer thinks not necessarily so. I thought quite spectacular. The computer wants to play g4, but after knight f6, the move g5. In general, I would think, well, that's just a strategic mistake. It allows knight to h5, and this knight is going to be, well, very nicely positioned there more or less forever. But the computer thinks having the pawn on g5 actually is hemming the black's counterplay, and that this knight on h5 perhaps is somewhat out of play. And it does it very convincingly. It puts the king to d2. Again, very puzzling, but we get to see the point. After b5, it hurries to play the move rook to b1. And it's somewhat prophylactic. I guess the king might start heading towards the f2 square, making this h5 knight quite sort of misplaced. And the idea is that a5 is a very typical way of counterplay, starting to harass this bishop, threatening a4. But here we have the strong move a4. And if you take it, well, we could just go to a2. But bishop d5 is even stronger, attacking the rook on a8. And they see this rook on b7, b1, starts having counterplay in the b file. So a very peculiar way of doing things, playing the move g5 and then the king to d2. But actually swapping queens here seems to be pretty advantageous for white. Not in terms of winning, but quite better than what we see in the game, and making this extremely standard rook sacrifice on c3 in the dragon a little bit dubious, at least in this version. Well, Thrasek took back with the pawn. Well, this game is from 2002. It's very understandable. This is how things was done at that time. But modern computers, once again, sort of reevaluate things. So the game was knight takes h5, bishop h6 happens, also very typical. And the game was takes, and now knight to f6. Well, the idea is that we really don't want to allow rook takes h5 sacrifices. I mean, well, white would take on h5, probably bring the rook to h1, and things could start to become very sort of, well, basically unstoppable in the h file. The author mentions that queen takes c3 is not too good a move because of knight to e2. Well, the basic point is queen a1 check, king d2 only helps a white. There is actually a funny line here. You can play the move knight to d3 check. Obviously, king b1 is made the next move. You can't do that. So you have to take on d3 and then check and take the rook on h1. Then white is going to go g4, and it sort of looks like he's winning a piece, right, due to the pin. But actually, knight g3 defense, because, well, their queen attacks like this, and after this exchange, this knight is, well, still alive. But after king e3, it seems to be stuck on h1. I mean, I've never seen a knight being stuck on h1 before in the dragon. But, well, it seems to be the case here, and white is clearly better. I mean, at best, black will get a pawn or two for it, but that's not really going to be enough. Anyway, that was quite a detour. I mean, Cebalo sort of quietly moved his knight to f6, getting out of danger. Now he plays king b2. And, well, probably wasting time to defend the anyway weak pawn on c3 is not a good idea. I think the typical way is to start attacking immediately, and if you take on c3, which now actually threatens queen a1, king d2, queen takes d4, then you make the move king to b1. The idea is, well, you forced him to take on c3, you gained a bit of time, and sometimes the knight will reroute via e2 with tempo. It really gonna depend on specifics, and here f3 is hanging and so on and so forth, but it's probably the right thing. I mean, king b2 becomes somewhat too passive. Also, after rook c8, well, now the threat is to take there with check. Well, his idea was queen to e3, trying to defend, but well, having the queens on the board actually makes the black counterplay much stronger. We saw that with queens exchanged, we could put our king in the center, we could start fighting for the b file. Here, it's a pretty sad scenario. Black plays queen c5, and white starts, you know, insinuating he's going to attack in the h file, but it's black attack who comes first. a5 is just a very strong move here. It threatens a4 next. Actually, white managed to bluff a little bit. He plays rook h1, and a4 would have been a good move now. I mean, the typical move is then this rook sacrifice and queen h6. It looks dangerous, but here after e6, takes king to f8, actually the black king is sort of gonna zigzag to safety, and there is well, white doesn't have a way through, and then this bishop is stuck on this square. Anyway, Shebalov chose to play it safe. He played e6 already here, sort of limiting the effects of this bishop, right? Now, if you play a move like a3, the author says that a4, bishop to a2, and now this nice move, rook to c6, sort of exploiting that in this position the queen is hanging, and like this we're going to get the rook to b6 now with a pretty nice attack. This pawn is going to be weak because, well, the king has to move away and we can take the pawn on a3, right? So he chose to play the move a4 here, but now a very typical move, b5. Well, actually, you could also be a bit greedy and take on a4. The point being, if you take here, there's a very obvious fork. But Shebalov plays even with more power. He plays b5, white takes, and now the move a4. Obviously, again, you can't take here due to the fork on the c square. So bishop a2 happens, and bishop takes b5. It almost feels to me like, having, you know, played the move b5, we managed to open the b file. And that's probably more valuable than having an extra pawn, right? Well, the author says king a1 was the best chance, but after bishop c4, black is still close to winning. In the game, Hrasek tried rook takes h7, take like this, queen h6, check, king to b1, and it looks dangerous, right? You can't move this knight due to queen h8 mate. But the game was just bishop takes to c4, and the simple point is that in this position, well, the king is running towards safety. And if you give a check and take the rook, then bishop takes a2 is check. So basic, well, it's check, and next move you can take the queen, right? So, I mean, this position is just hopeless for white, and the black won in a few moves. So, I mean, an amazing game for black in the Dragon, right? You start off with an exchange sacrifice, and then you win in a, you know, incredible attacking style. I mean, I explained in the introduction that there is reasons why the Dragon is not as good as it seems. But of course it's tempting, and if you've never played the Dragon in your life, at least give it a try. I think, well, you should enjoy the pleasures of playing the Dragon, and at some point you will understand, well, it also goes wrong at times. But of course it's a fascinating opening. Unfortunately, not as good as it would... it should be, because chess would be a even more beautiful game if the Dragon was an excellent opening. But probably it's not, but when it works, it's very beautiful, right?